course. Happy to be here.
How are you?
Good.
James.
Nice to meet you,
Nice to
Chris.
meet you. Thank you for volunteering. How are you? Good to see you again. You well?
Good to see you,
I
yes.
like that.
Thank you so much. How have you been?
Good.
Yeah, I've been sitting behind you a couple of times, so very good. Very good.
Good.
So,
Sorry,
liking the
you're fretting.
Yeah.
It's
You
good.
love this one?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm excited. Excited. Such a great team. So,
Well, you guys are part
just keep the momentum rolling.
So you joining us today?
Yeah. Thought I hadn't attended one yet, so.
Oh, really?
This is a good one. We get kind of broad overview of like what we're doing there.
Yeah, I'm looking at this and I'm liking that too. I'm already having questions and I'm already pulling something together from studying the budget in here and the M&O
Yeah.
from the summary.
Yeah. It's good. Better.
It really is. Really interesting too is what's going on.
Anyone need a
So
pen?
my only question to you would be.
I got one. Thank you for bringing them. Of course, because I did lose mine. We're all good?
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
I know you've been staying busy.
It's nice to have that.
So you've been involved with the.
I mean,
Were you involved with some of the CIP stuff as well?
I'm on the bond committee.
You're on the bond committee, right?
Yeah, I'm actually chairman of the bond committee. Of that.
John.
How are you, James?
Yeah.
You know, we on a personal level can also. Scope creep.
Absolutely.
All right, well, we
Legal
do
had
have
to
a
be
quorum if y'all want to
Yep.
get started. I want to make sure we have plenty of time for questions, so we'll call to order at 12:02. Let me see. Sorry, you're fine. So, citizens' comments. Don't know if we have any
Objection, Your Honor.
citizens. I don't think James counts as a citizen. So we will move on to, oh, you already did it. She's way ahead of me. Approval of the minutes of the April 15th meeting. So I know those were sent out a little bit early for y'all's review.
Yeah. Motion to accept?
Second.
Everybody in favor?
Aye.
Hi.
Thank you.
Hi.
Hi. We got you. We got you counted. So our topic today is a big one, but it'll fill the rest of our time, I'm sure. We'll be talking about the fiscal 27 preliminary budget. These are the main topics that we will be covering today. I do note that utilities is not on here. We're still working through the utility fund, so I did want to point out that that will be presented at the July 14th budget work session. So in order to pick up that information, also the rates for utilities will also be a discussion at that meeting. So just wanted to point that out. But we can talk about what we've seen and what's kind of driving the budget for 27. Appraised taxable values. So we have received our preliminary values, which usually has a pretty large assumption of loss. So we don't even consider that amount when we're just doing our preliminary work. Do want to point out that new valuation revenue is $262 million. That is in comparison to the $159 million the previous year. So we are gaining additional new value, which is good. There was also an increase in the TERS captured value, which does affect the general fund and the debt service fund, because that means that $132 million is a gain in the TERS fund, not in the general fund. So even though it's a gain in value, it doesn't directly benefit general fund and debt service fund. And then last year there was new legislation regarding personal property exemption. We had a representative from Travis County Appraisal District come and speak to council regarding that exemption, because we knew that that would affect our values. Originally, the assumption was that the exemption would be around $209 million. The preliminary estimate we've received from them this year is $74 million. So the explanation was that they were able to group some of the related properties so that it reduced the impact of the loss of value. So that was actually good to hear, and didn't impact us as much as we were kind of bracing for. So all that to say, if you look at the bottom of the chart, as you can see in 22 and 23, we had, large gains year over year. And now we're looking at much smaller gains. As a matter of fact, for 2026, we're actually looking at a reduction in growth year over year. So something to keep in mind. The 12 billion number is including the TERS value, so that is total value. Just keep in mind that TERS comes out of that before we start actually doing the calculations for what revenue the general fund would receive. So we can go to the next slide. So this is just our preliminary projections. So for fiscal 26, our budget was $29 million. We're projecting a little bit less. It's a little bit hard to project. There's quarterly payments that are made that will come in the future, but I tried to take that into consideration with the projections. And then the fiscal 27 obviously is based on preliminary value. We will receive that certified roll usually a little before July 25th. They're pretty good about getting it to us timely. So with these preliminary numbers, we're gaining about $639,000 over last year's budget in the general fund.
And as part of that certification process, that's Travis County finishing up with anybody who's kind of
Right.
proposed or put in a...
They'll still have a value in the certified roll
Okay.
of under protest.
Okay.
And we just take that into consideration. We don't ever count all of the under protest.
Okay.
Normally, they'll provide us 75%, 80% number to use, assuming that, you don't ever want to use that full amount that's still under protest in your calculation.
Just to make sure I'm following, the general fund is included in these numbers here,
This is the revenue that the general fund would benefit from.
the property
yes.
tax revenue. And so the preliminary projection is that there's going to be an increase?
Yes,
Oh.
because we will gain the new value amount.
Okay. Okay, that's
So
true.
even if you're just looking at same revenue year over year, the new value amount doesn't get included in that calculation.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay. Thank you.
Yeah. So just a quick review of the tax rate process. We will get the certified values. The tax assessor actually is the one to certify the calculation. I do my own rate calculation, but then I send everything to them and they actually do the certified value. I always want to make sure we're all on the same page with those rate calculations. The governing body will propose a rate. Normally, we will recommend a proposed rate at the voter approval rate. They can always adopt a rate less, they can never adopt a rate more. So we always want to have that proposed rate so that we can be flexible going into that final adoption of the budget. So that will happen on August 11th. The public hearing will be held on September 8th. That is the same night that they will adopt the tax rate.
And when you say going off of the accepted rate, that's kind of like the highest rate, right? We want to go in with the highest rate, yeah.
Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah, and we'll talk about what that looks like. So just kind of reiterating the truth in taxation, several years back, there was a real push to make sure we're being transparent, make sure we're getting that information out there. There's websites out there for the truth in taxation. You can go and see any entity. You can see all of their rates, their rate history. So just kind of reiterating that there's steps. We will publish at some point in the process the no new revenue rate, the voter approval rate, all of our debt. So all of those things will get posted out there. I wanted to point out that on the planning calendar that you have in your folder it will highlight all of those steps through the process and those deadlines for those publications. So yeah, just pointing out the tax rate and the breakout of it, just to kind of remind ourselves the maintenance and operations is equal to the ongoing general fund operations. So that's the piece that we just discussed a few slides ago. And then you have the interest and sinking portion, which is your debt service portion. We're about to touch on what that looks like. So that equals your total tax rate. Next slide. So the no new revenue tax rate will always be the rate that's being calculated that will provide the same revenue year over year. So one of the things I want to point out, you just saw that our values have gone down.
Mm-hmm.
So when we run this no new revenue rate calculation, we're going to see that no new revenue increase because we are allowed to receive the same revenue year over year on the same property. And so if that valuation drops, because normally in the pattern that we've seen over the last 5 years, your no new revenue rate would continue to kind of lower as your valuation is going up. Well, we are having the opposite effect this year. So just want to point that out. When you see those rates, that will answer the question as to why that rate is going to be higher.
And you may have already touched on this, but the drop is due to, what was it? You may have mentioned it earlier in the,
Valuation.
just the appraiser, right? Just, okay.
Yeah, that and the legislative changes.
Oh, okay. That affected-
Additional exemptions, that
Okay.
will lower them. Yeah.
Yeah, there were, I don't know, 2 or 3 big ones last year.
Yeah. The property one the personal property one is the one that would have affected us the most. I think some of the other ones might have been on the school district side, but,
Okay.
so we kind of touched on this. The voter approval tax rate is going to be that no new revenue rate plus 3.5%.
Mhm.
So that's that voter approval rate, which we would recommend being proposed as our proposed rate. It is what our budget has been built on as well. So just pointing that out.
And I don't know, you might still be trying to figure out what that rate is yet. that correct?
Right, yeah,
Okay.
we haven't, we're using a number in the budget, but as far as like nailing down what that rate's gonna be, we really have to wait for certified roll. So we'll be running around at the last minute, finalizing those rates as soon as we get that certified roll. And making sure that our budget is still okay with the amount of revenue that we put in there.
Thank you.
So this part of the property tax revenue is the INS portion. It's the debt service fund. And so last year we budgeted 33 million. We are projecting to come in a little less. I do want to point out the difference between budget and projection is all the adjustments that happen during the year. So we'll step out with the certified roll and with an estimate of the under protested amount. But if more adjustments come in throughout the year, and they always do, this is what sways that difference between the budget and the projected. So our preliminary is based on the preliminary values. So do want to point out that we do have an available fund balance in that fund. And over the last couple of years, we have been strategically using a portion of that available fund balance to, I guess you could say, buy down that rate.
Yeah.
So that, so right now, what I have put into the calculation is that we would use 4.85 million to basically keep that debt rate the same as it was in fiscal 26. If I didn't use that 4.85 million, that rate would push up. And you'll see why in the next slide. But basically, our total debt due is increasing by 1.3 million in 27. So I do have a very fuzzy but effective slide on, this is kind of our outlook of where our debt is. And you can kind of see that it's consistently trending up until we get to 2036. And then in 2036, it drops back down and it stays even and it starts to drop. So without adding any new debt to our portfolio, this is the trend of how our debt is.
And is that because you have certain debt that will be paid off at that point?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm curious, and I don't think it's relevant to what we're talking about, but what the slide looks like leading up to 2026, as the city grew, sort of what that debt was, the debt that was acquired, what exactly it was. But I think that's outside of what we're trying to discuss. And one other thing, the 4.8 million kind of reserve that we have worked in there, I mean, it's a local government's kind of objective to reduce the need for a public hearing, right? But meaning like go above the 3.5 rate to get the citizens' approval, right? Because isn't that like a long process? Or
So I do want to separate the difference between the M&O is the general fund side. That's where the 3.5% lives. The
Okay.
debt rate is completely based on what debt we have due the next year.
But we also have 4.8 in the general fund that
Nope,
we're sort of
it's not in the
counting
general
on.
fund. It's
Oh,
in the debt
okay.
service fund.
It's in the debt
So I want to
service
be real
fund.
clear.
It's like a
you've got your
reserve,
general
yes.
fund, you've got your debt service fund.
Okay.
So over the years, there has been a buildup in that fund balance.
Sure.
We have been drawing that down, but we've been drawing it strategically to keep that debt
Absolutely.
rate tapped down.
Absolutely,
So you
which
just
is
chose to
smart.
take that 4.8,
Yes.
apply it essentially to
Yes.
principal, kind of?
It's
Or-
applied against the debt due to lower the calculation of the debt rate.
It's like as needed. It's like to fall back on in case, right? I mean, it's reserve,
Well, we do
basically.
have we do have a forecast, a 5-year forecast, where we've sort of laid out what this looks like over the next 5 years based on what the debt is going to be for those years
Mhm.
and how much of that fund balance we would want to apply each year. So we do,
Okay.
it's not just, we haven't looked at it in a silo of a year. We've actually laid out a forecast to
Okay.
try to determine, like, how do we draw down this fund balance, but we draw it down strategically so that we can keep this debt rate, very close to the same over the course of the years.
And that's a realistic outlook, being that values are on the downward trend. So that's a realistic outlook. And, be it if it was 3 years ago, then we would maybe want to put away a little bit more money for future years, right?
Yeah.
Rather than count on the 4.8, which is what it looks like we did. And so
But
now
if
we have the
don't
5.
use it,
Yeah.
our debt rate will go up just based
Right.
on the debt that's due next year.
Okay.
So, yeah.
And on the slide with all the debt, and what it looks like paying it down, I see just the debt going up a little bit. Are there, because debt's a part of what we do, right? So there are projects on the horizon and just anticipated. Is that based on?
So this chart right here is based on what has already been issued.
Okay.
And it has no built-in projected
Okay.
future debt.
Okay.
This is just what we have legally committed to
Got it.
as of right now.
Any foreseeable debt in the future, probably also outside of the scope of this discussion.
So the only debt being considered in fiscal 27 would be any bond election projects. So
Okay. Okay.
it would have to be voter approved, and it would increase the debt rate, and all of that will be discussed during the bond election process, but that would be voter approved at
Okay.
that point. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you very much.
So the other revenue, so the two main revenues in the general fund is property tax and sales tax. So we're kind of having the same issue on the sales tax side as far as we saw great growth over the last 5 years, and now we're really seeing a reduction. And so as you can see from here, our fiscal 26 budget was built on a 3% increase over the fiscal 25 projections. We are not projecting to get to that budget. We're projecting to be short, just based on where we are. I will say I did go back and do a little bit of research because whenever they do the calculations for the sales tax, there's always this audit adjustment thrown in there, and it really skews the year-over-year analysis. And so I went back and looked at what is our net collections without audit adjustments year over year. We're actually trending at the 3%. If you take out the audit adjustments, but because we had some large audit adjustments last year, it kind of elevated our revenue last year, which means when we don't come in that high this year, it looks as though we're trending down.
Because you're averaging it.
But total revenue is.
Okay.
But I actually wanted to say, okay, wait. But our actual current collections is trending a 3% increase.
Okay.
That being said, because of the fact that we're going to end up with a lower projection than we budgeted, we are building this budget on a flat increase. We're not assuming any increase in sales tax for fiscal 27 because it is unpredictable at this point, and we don't want to build the budget based on any kind of increase in this revenue. So that's what you're seeing on this slide is just 0% over our projected, so that we can feel confident we're coming, in front of council with expenses that are not based on, some projections that are a little bit unpredictable at this point.
I think that's very wise. So cool.
So the next slide, y'all can look at kind of the trends and stuff. This is a 4-year look. So, sales tax has just been a little bit all over the place over the last several years. So it just kind of reiterates our stance on what we're doing for fiscal 27.
Out of curiosity, what accounts for the big spikes in, looks like
The
February, May?
So February, if you think about it, is December's sales.
Okay,
So we
so this is
receive-
kind of, you're looking back. Okay.
Yeah,
Like
it's
Christmas.
a 2-month lag between their sales and when we receive the funds.
Okay.
So February will always have a spike because it's always Christmas sales. But if there is a spike, like we've done research on some of the months, and there was a particular company that bought a very large piece of equipment. And so it was like one purchase, 1 month, and it made our sales tax like spike that way. So sometimes it's just an anomaly of a purchase. And we do use a third party that dumps all the detail into a software that we have access to, which is super helpful. And they are really good about, like, I can go to them and say, what happened here? Like, I don't have hours to dig into this data, what happened on this
Right.
particular month. They're really good about coming back with, it was this, it
Yeah.
was this vendor, and it was this purchase, so it's really nice. But that's what the February spike is.
Just out of curiosity, what's that software that you guys use?
Exact tax.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Out of curiosity, also, what was it? Was it like farm machinery or something that was built from one
It
of the
was
stores?
some kind of construction piece of
Okay.
equipment.
Okay.
It was large, and the tax on it was a lot.
Cool.
So this is preliminary fiscal 27 fund summary of the general fund. So it kind of lays out, our beginning fund balance, the revenues from our amended budget, 64 million. We're projecting 63. Some of that is property tax. We've kind of looked at those numbers already. Sales tax not coming into budget. Interest has been lower than we originally budgeted, so we've tried to make sure we lower that again in fiscal 27. Those are the main ones. Development fees are actually going to exceed budget this year, so it's really just kind of a netting of what we're short on and what we're going to be over on. But we will. Don't think we will get up to that 64.3 budget. And then for the proposed in 27, we're proposing a little over 65 million. The expense side, so for fiscal 27, we're still looking at numbers, so this will change, but we've kind of settled and are we have a little bit of revenue over where we're sitting with expenses as of today. On the non-reoccurring expenditures, so the reason why we split these out is so that we can recognize what we are purposefully taking out of fund balance. So our reoccurring revenue should always be more or balanced to the reoccurring expenditures. That is our goal. But our policy for fund balance in the general fund is 25%. So if we're over that 25%, there's an opportunity there to use those funds for capital or one-time. And I do have a slide on what breaks out the capital and one-time in a few minutes. I wanted to talk a little bit about the transfer to the vehicle equipment and replacement fund. So this fund is a new fund. We established it in fiscal 26. And we moved 610,000. It was actually up in the reoccurring expenditures. It was not coming out of fund balance. Into that fund to start building a replacement fund. So now that we're going into our second year, we have gotten with our fleet department and all of our other departments. We've reviewed what needs to be replaced. And so I updated your slides. So the 1.6 is what we anticipate needing to move over into the vehicle equipment and replacement fund in order to replace those vehicles and equipment for fiscal 27. I will say, to preface as we go along, so as we start building this fund, we will need to start paying ourselves those replaced vehicles. So this is just the initial purchase of the vehicle. When we get to fiscal 28, we will actually start seeing a fee, a VERF fee, we're going to call it a VERF fee, from the general fund or from the utility fund into this vehicle equipment replacement fund. in order to start setting aside the money to replace that vehicle that was just purchased. So you're basically, it's like a building of this fund in order to be able to replace these items as they, and I think on the vehicles, we have a 7-year, equipment, we have 10. So I think that's our general replacement cycle. So that's what that is. Any questions on that? Because it is new and it is a little bit of a different process.
There is, I would imagine, specifics on what the 16, the 1.6 are being spent on, right? Like department, vehicle,
Yes.
need,
Yeah,
et
and we'll
cetera.
include that as a table in the budget document. So when you get the proposed budget, we should have highlighted,
Okay.
what we're replacing.
Now, does that, or where does, like, maintenance, general repairs and stuff, that's not
all
in
in
here?
under, it's captured under the recurring expenditures. This is just the capital portion
purchase and
of purchasing that
Okay.
vehicle. Yep. Okay, so, well, and with that, it takes us down to an estimated fund balance reserve of 27%, that's about where we want to be, like a little over that policy.
Our
So-
policy is 25%, correct?
Yes. Yes. So we want to be over 25%. But we don't want to be too over 25%. So general fund, we've kind of touched on most of these. Increases, property tax. There's a transfer of the tree escrow fund. And then there's also participation from Travis County on an emergency medical services contract. So that is a difference in our budget this year. Decreases were sales tax, interest, and recreation fees. The reason recreation fees are being decreased from the general fund budget is because the new recreation center is being set up as an enterprise fund in the new fiscal year. So if you want to go to the next one, we kind of cover. So on personnel budget assumptions, on the general fund FTE changes, kind of wanted to lay these out because it was very complicated for John to keep up with. So we laid it out here. We're actually, we've decreased 20 full-time equivalent positions. General fund has gained 5 from the utility fund. And this was just a restructuring of our public works department in that, for instance, a great example would be inspectors. They were kind of spread out all over the budget. We have consolidated all the inspectors under one umbrella, which lives in the general fund. So you will see a cost allocation increase because general fund still needs to pick up their portion of paying for these inspectors, but we've redistributed kind of where those positions live. So that explains kind of that transfer. We've taken 15 positions and taken them out of the general fund and put them over into the Monarch Fund. And so that's our new enterprise fund for the new recreation center. So all personnel will actually live in a different fund now. So that's a pretty large change for the general fund. And then we've eliminated 10 positions out of the general fund, and they're across multiple departments.
It might be nice, because I know that we do that. We move from fund to fund and so forth. But it might be nice when you're laying this out is to have a table.
We have a table.
Yeah, like shows which fund and where the things are decreases. Like,
Yeah.
like here's where we started. Here's
We
how
can
many
use
we're
we could
allocating.
add a change column to our position. We have a position control table,
Right.
but we could actually add a change column for that fiscal
Right.
year just to kind of, and it'll also be explained in each of the funds. So if a particular department is going down by total FTEs, that will actually be explained on their department page as well. So there'll be a couple of
I'm a big
places.
fan of
Yeah.
having high level.
Table, yeah.
Like something to set the context, because when you see, then you have people going, oh, you're cutting 20 people, because they assume an FTE is a person, and it's not. Those are two different things.
Yeah.
But for someone to say, okay, here's some of it's readjusting, and being able to kind of see big picture before you go into detail.
Yeah, and out of the 10 eliminated positions, 9 were vacant positions. So we've basically like, this is a vacant position, we are choosing not to fill it. And one was a position that position got eliminated, but that person was moved to a vacant position. So there was no
Impact to people.
That's
Yeah.
right. That's right. So that kind of explains the 10. On the cost estimate side, we do have a 3% cost of living built into the budget, and we also have an 8% employee health insurance cost increase, which we always start out with a 25%, and usually can negotiate and get it down to 8%. Seems pretty reasonable. That kind of what
I was going
we've
to say, y'all are
seen
doing good if it's 8%.
over the last several. I mean, sometimes in order for us to make what we've stepped out in our budget, we do have to make plan changes. So we'll, our insurance runs calendar year, not fiscal year. So a lot of those decisions aren't actually made till after we have adopted our budget or right at the time that we're adopting our budget. So we try to make good estimations, and then when we go into negotiations, we will negotiate based on what we've approved in the budget. So that will happen later on in the summer.
The 5%, the 5 transfers from UF, like, or I've seen maybe that and maybe another item or two, but kind of helps with the item that we discussed last time we met, which was like that what appeared to be a revenue overage in utilities that was then, moved over to the general fund. This kind of seems like it's addressing that issue. Like, would that be related to that item that we discussed last meeting?
Well, no, because the 5 that were moved to general fund will actually be covered with a cost allocation. So it's just a different mechanism to cover those costs.
Sure.
What we talked about was much bigger than that, and which is the fact that you will see it again this year. We will bring in more revenue and utilities than our expenses show. But it's because of a debt coverage calculation that happens over to the side, which we try to explain, but it's extremely hard to explain. So we have to set rates at a certain point that will cover our debt coverage calculation, which is not, it's not compared apples to apples with the debt that's due that year.
Okay.
It's based on an average and a maximum debt
Okay.
over the life of those schedules.
Sure.
And so, for instance, I can throw out there like the maximum is based on like 54 million. We might only owe 34 million. But we have to set our rates to cover a 1.25 debt coverage. And so we really can't change that. That's set in our loan documents that we have to make sure that we cover that calculation.
Sure.
But what we can do is when you see that revenue over what those expenditures are, we're trying to strategically use that overage that we're bringing in to cash fund CIP to avoid doing any future debt for utility projects. And so there are ways that you're still going to use the money that you're bringing in. It just looks, we have to really explain it, because on the surface, it looks like, oh, y'all are, you're setting our rates high and you're bringing in a whole bunch of extra revenue.
Right.
That really isn't what we're doing, because we're bound by all of these debt covenants.
Right.
But we are trying to strategically use that additional money that's being brought in to cover CIP projects going forward. And so we've tried to explain that on the department pages. We'll continue to expound to make sure that we make sure that we're communicating that. But that is why the revenue is higher than the expenditures. Yeah.
Understood, for
Yeah.
sure. And that's why it stood out. So I think,
Yes.
the best, as much explanation as you can afford is helpful, but it is hard to
Yes.
But yeah, I
Yes.
get it. Okay.
So on the increases in the general fund, I mean, we knew we were going to have some of these increases, which is why we knew going into this budget it was going to be tough. So we do have new facilities going online, taking out the recreation center because that's a separate fund now. We're just talking about things that are going to be going up for the new city hall. So we've built in increases in utilities. We've built in an increase in janitorial services and property insurance. We also had to build in the full impact of the emergency medical services contract. As we discussed, we have added the Travis County contribution to that, but we have to pay the full amount, and it's more than our current contract. Sorry. Computer replacement. We kicked the can last year and we didn't do any computer replacements. Well, you really can't do that 2 years in a row. So we've had to build that back in. What we have done is the portion that should have been replaced last year, you'll see it on the next slide. It's built into that one-time request, so that we can get the current year in the reoccurring expenditures, do our catch-up with one time, and then we should be back on track with doing our computer replacements every year out of reoccurring expenditures. Citywide software, there's just increases in demands, but some of that is efficiencies based on less positions. So sometimes you have to pay a little more for your software for those efficiencies. And then I also added, and will be on the slide for council, is cost allocation. So the cost allocation is going up on the general fund side based on some of the changes that we made with where positions live and stuff.
So what, as far as the citywide software go, is there a place for the AI? Is that
I
part of the cost?
don't know, I don't remember specifically us adding anything specifically on the AI side.
Do we not see that as possible?
I
Is
think
that in
we
the future?
do. I think this has been a very challenging budget year with the tightness of everything. I think the AI is nice, and we're still looking into how that will benefit the city. We're still taking that journey
Is
of
any of that-
what those costs would be.
Yeah, I'm wondering if any of that, so if y'all are a Microsoft, user, for
Yeah.
example, whether or not you already have contracts for Microsoft.
Yes.
And
I mean, so Copilot's a part of that
Copilot and
suite,
Studio
and-
are the AI
Yes.
portions of it, so it might
Yes.
not be that it's an additional software, but
And I
it is
think-
just access to different aspects of that.
Yes, and I
Right.
think like
Yeah.
some of
So
the.
they probably already have something in there.
And is that part of the demand that's increasing, as we're looking
Right,
at?
it's part of our citywide
Right,
software.
so is that part of the demand that's increasing as far as the software? Because it's being implemented within the bases or defaults of the hardware and the software. So it absolutely is going to increase something along the line, whether
Right.
hardware or software. So that's where I was going with that. Is that the reason for the increase? And we're kind of stuck with that, all of us actually.
Yeah.
So I was just wondering if it's on the citywide level.
Yes.
Thank
Or
you.
if it's just different programs, different
Yeah,
departments.
and I think like
Yeah.
some of the programs have that built into them already, for sure.
But the demand is changing and it's increasing. Hence,
Yes.
is that going to include an increased cost according to the demand that you were saying as far as efficiency goes, right? And in using the innovation of technology to reach that same efficacy, right? Because they are implementing, they're kind of forcing and or imposing is what I like to say.
Yeah.
We can get the job done without it. However, that is how they're
You're
building
gonna
it
pay more
now.
for the
Right.
software. Yep.
So that's why I was just wondering if that's part of it.
I'm sure that's
Could
I'm
be
sure
part of the
that's
increase,
included.
yeah. Okay, thanks.
I have a question on just one of the bullets, emergency medical services. I think we mentioned it before too. I just recently had EMS over at my house for my father-in-law, and they were super responsive. And it was what's the name of the place we use? Allegiance, yeah. And it was awesome. But so are we trying to supplement that? Is that part of the increases in emergency medical services?
Do you want to take that one? He wants to take this
Not that Mike can pick me up.
one. Here, I'll help you.
Council is, they're looking at emergency medical services. They, there's only so much I can say right now because they're kind of
Sure.
in negotiations and looking at different options for EMS. We're planning for a potential change in EMS services. We're going to budget that way,
Mm-hmm.
and if not, we can dial it back. And so that transfer from the county is a one-time.
Mm.
And so we're just kind of looking ahead. So if they do decide to make a change, that we have the funding available to do that.
I got you. That makes sense. And I'm sorry, we haven't. Can
So
you?
I'm James Hartshorn. I'm the deputy city manager and incoming city manager.
Awesome. Great. Nice to meet you. Glad you're here.
Thank you,
Thanks for that
James.
answer.
So on the general capital and one-time requests, I've kind of highlighted here some of the things that are being put in that bucket. Senior advisor, computer replacement, we talked about that. Computer upgrade for engineering is a specific request for engineering to get them the equipment they need to actually run a software that would save us a lot of money from consulting, and the staff would be able to actually do that process in-house. So that's a great purchase for them. Old Town playground replacement, that playground is due for replacement, so we are slotting it to be replaced next year. Security cameras at the library. Temporary trailer removal is just a fee we're having to pay. So we have all these trailers out at Public Works, but we're actually building a new Public Works complex, which is which we're not going to need these trailers anymore. But they don't just come and get the trailers; they charge you a fee to have to come and break them down. And so that's just a one-time fee for those removals. And then the fleet replacement, we talked about the vehicle equipment and replacement fund.
And these security cameras, are they part of the Flock suite, or are they unique
They're
to the
just
library?
security cameras.
They're just security, okay.
Yeah. They're actually managed by our IT department.
Oh, fantastic. Okay.
Hotel occupancy tax, not a lot of change in this fund. We do highlight it. The revenue is trending pretty flat year over year, and so that's how we're budgeting. We continue to monitor and enforce our short-term rentals. I did want to talk about, just real quickly, we are bringing forward, and if you've watched any of the recent council meetings, a tourism public improvement district, and so it would work in a lot of ways like the hotel occupancy tax as far as the collection of the additional 2% for this public improvement district, but it would have its own separate fund. So I'm just kind of keeping an eye on that. If that all goes through, we will have to add that as an additional fund, but it would be collected along with our hotel occupancy tax. Next one.
I've just got one from the senior advisor bullet from 2 slides previous.
That is one-time cost that we're incurring for the city manager transition plan.
I gotcha.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Cool. Thank you.
Let's go past that. So things that are tracked in the hotel occupancy tax, we do have a piece of that funding that we use for public art, not just pieces of art and murals, but also the music in some of our special events. We can use these funds for that. Economic incentives, we have one economic incentive that uses hotel tax. That's a long-term agreement. Promotion and marketing for tourism training, memberships to tourism organizations, and then the software costs for our short-term rental platform.
So is the HOT, is this just the expenditure side of what, like the tourism, like, revenue line item
Yeah,
would
it's
be?
a separate fund.
It's a
So
separate
it
fund,
tracks all
totally.
the revenue of the hot tax and all of the expenditures that are allowed to be paid out of that fund.
Okay. I probably would just want to look at the specifics to see what the difference are. Is that going to be something that's available in July, or when do you think we'll have more
There
information
will
on that?
be sub-accounts in the fund, in the proposed budget.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
So, also, are these the main things that we're looking at when it comes to hotel occupancy tax? As I've watched them come up over the years, I figured they were associated with the business in the area as well. You know, like people coming in on business. I don't know
Tourism.
but
Yeah.
yeah. But we're looking more at tourism and what attracts people here, like events and festivals and stuff like that.
It's promoting that, yes.
Okay.
But that includes the business travel as well.
Sure.
It's still considered tourism.
Okay,
Yeah.
got it.
Or you
Cool.
got family coming in.
Yeah,
You don't want
exactly.
them at your house.
Absolutely, that's
Yeah.
what it is. Yeah.
And that's kind of where the short-term
You
rental
know,
comes
you never
in.
know.
Absolutely.
Short-term
Okay.
rental software.
So-
Real quick, I'm sorry.
Yes.
You said short-term rental software? Can you explain
It's
that? I don't know what that is.
well, it's a combination of it. It tracks the hotels as well, but the biggest part of what this software does is it goes out and lets us know residents within our jurisdiction, if they're out on Airbnb or Vrbo or all of the different platforms, if they're renting their house for short-term rental, they should be following our ordinance. There's no way for staff to keep up with all of these residents that are doing this type of rental, and so this software actually facilitates that.
So it's
And
a
helps
type of
us.
compliance.
Yes.
Okay.
It has tracking?
It shows us like when it's been rented and where the address and what platform it's registered on, and it's very helpful. The Pflugerville Community Development Corporation will cover this budget on June 9th as well. This just gives a summary of the fiscal 26 budget, what's projected, and what is being proposed. On the next slide is just some highlights. No additional personnel requests are being made for 27, but you will see an increase in that personnel line. That's due to market increases that happened mid-year of this fiscal year. Also, they already have built in the 3% COLA and the 8% insurance coverage. Just some of the things that I noticed as I reviewed their operating expenditures, they're budgeting for a market study, a strategic plan. They've increased their site tours line item and their recruitment programs. On the capital side, they're putting in Innovation Hub of $500,000, Project Nexus, which is the 52 acres that they're working through the preliminaries on developing that 52 acres. They put 1 million, and Wet Labs 500,000.
It's a quick question. I know this was a couple slides back, I'm sorry, but on the fund summary, you know, it looks like projected 26 spike. 27 is lower than, proposed is lower than the amended budget. So just at a high level, what's kind of driving that difference between those?
So you're looking at the
Just the
total
ending
operating
net position.
expenditures?
Like if I look at
net
ending
position.
net position.
So some of it is being driven by some one-time purchases. For instance, when the 52 acres was purchased, they did do a loan of 18 and a half, but yet they used available cash. So there was an intentional drawdown of some of those reserves that were on hand.
And that's the Nexus, Project Nexus?
Yes.
Okay, got it.
And then they also this year are doing a capital project that's being cash funded.
Okay.
So the Helios right in, right out that you noticed that was put in to facilitate trucks going in and out of the industrial park right off of 130's feeder. That was one of their projects that they did this year, and the extension of Impact Way. So they did cash fund those capital projects. So those are all part of what's drawing down that net position.
Okay, thank you.
So here's where we are, and here's where we're going. We do have some budget workshops coming up on June 9th. We will be covering the slides you saw today. On July 14th is when we will talk about the utility fund, solid waste, and we'll also be bringing back fees. So that's something you might want to tune into to hear that presentation and also the questions that we will be receiving from council. On August 11th, we will be proposing a tax rate, and so council will be approving that, and we will be posting all of the required postings for that. And then September 8th is when we actually do the adoption of the budget and the tax rate. Our next meeting is August 19th, which you will receive the proposed budget the same time that council receives it, so that you have time to start working through that document.
That's
So it
July
would-
31st, right?
August 1st.
August 1st.
Well, it's July 31st. It's a Friday. So we figured our charter requires us to have it in their hands by August 1st. So that gives y'all that time between receiving it and the meeting on the 19th to review the document thoroughly and come with any questions. And I think that's it.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
I just have one question about the PCDC capital outlay. Obviously, these are investments to help like our business community and to increase some of that revenue down the line.
Yeah.
I know that wouldn't impact our budget this year, but how do we represent that in conversations about like future year budgets? Is that projected anywhere like in future years revenue, or is that more speculative and like PCDC sort of handles that separately?
I mean, we do their finances for them. It would be a little difficult. So one of the things about the Impact Way improvement is opening up more of their property
Right.
with a road so that they can start, promoting and selling those properties. So, wouldn't know when
Right.
a company would come in. It would be a little hard to project, but those are all benefits of that capital improvement project, is basically opening up access to more of their industrial park land so that they could,
Yeah, absolutely. I think that when talking about this project to the public, if there's any way that we can even sort of like estimate what that sort of benefit might be. I mean, obviously you want to probably undersell it, but that would, I think, be a way of inspiring confidence in some of these investments, and
Yeah.
just generate excitement about them as well. So.
it's good.
I think that's good advice. And I just have one question: is the short-term rental? What is that?
It is when, usually homes, like
Okay.
Airbnb, when you rent a home for a couple
Okay.
of days, it's considered a short-term rental, and
Oh.
there is an imposed hot tax on a short-term rental.
I wasn't aware of that. So Airbnb. Okay, got it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you'll have ordinances or in the charter for what people have to do in order to comply with that.
Yeah.
So,
Very cool.
Okay, one
Very
last
cool.
question I have. This is a simple one.
Mm-hmm.
General fund capital, that slide has computer upgrade engineering under the one-time request, right? And then it goes back to the citywide software. They connect, right?
Mhm.
Does that also include the streaming of all of the meetings that you have, like the council meetings and such? Will I be able to watch it better? That's the bottom line. That's what I want to know. Will I
Oh,
not have to be
is that
kicked off
changing?
or frozen? Is it improving? Is that part of what's included?
I don't know.
Okay.
I would have to look into that. I'm not sure that I remember that changing in the budget.
Okay.
But I can certainly pass that on to communications.
If you would, please. I think it's very important that we're not kicked off or frozen. The error comes up, and I think more of us would like to be involved, especially if we're going to be promoting and pushing that. with what's
We'll have
going
a
on.
better system in the new building.
I'm sorry?
We'll have a better system in the new building in about 6 months.
Yep.
And you might want to check on
That
your
makes
end, like what devices and things, because I can say I've streamed from my phone, from my TV, and I don't have any problems with
I
anything
know I
crazy.
do, the reset or turn off, turn back on.
He makes
But
a
it
good
happens in
point.
the
We
house.
will be in a new building with all new equipment, so,
Yeah.
yeah.
Purpose built.
Sweet.
It's very exciting. Thank you.
Yes, you're welcome. So I think we kind of covered future agenda items. We'll be looking at the proposed budget very quickly in an hour. We kind of talked about making that meeting longer. Is there
I Think-
consensus to do that?
I think it would make sense to do that.
Maybe plan for 90 minutes, and if we
Yeah.
get through early,
Yeah,
yeah,
we'll do that.
because it feels like that's going to be a very meaty topic.
Yes, it's going to be a large document.
Another thing that we talked about doing in the first meeting was maybe having a way of us being able to just sort of like review the budget separately. I know that there's the Open Meetings Act,
Yeah.
and we talked about Zoom maybe being a way of doing that. Maybe streaming on YouTube might be another way of just low friction. That way we don't have to, we could do it separately and not have to, like I would say more coordinate internally. Do you think that's something that's a possibility, or is that?
I did run that by our city secretary, and I mean, two of you can speak.
Right.
Yeah,
You just have to be careful not to have a quorum.
right.
And not make a decision outside of it.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, and that is really bound to, it's not just a city thing. That's how, however you want to look at open government, sunshine laws are intentional.
Oh, yeah. I'm not suggesting we do anything that violates those laws. I was just speculating if we could do something that still fulfilled that requirement, virtually. So as a way of us being able to collaborate offline and just sort of bring up questions before, but that's something that we can also
Like a recorded
But we
meeting,
could-
like if we did meet and recorded it or something.
Well,
or
like
if it was streamed.
Yeah, like these are streamed,
Yeah.
and then Zoom meetings is another way that I know they were handled during COVID.
Okay.
So it's something that maybe we can talk about individually, and we can just continue to see if it makes sense, rather than making it
Like
make a
reach out
decision
to
right
you
now.
all. It'd be like an additional one of these, I guess, basically. Just sort
But
of.
are you saying like between your members or with staff?
I mean, I don't want to burden you guys with another meeting, so I think even just between members, if we could, just have where we have an open Zoom meeting where the public can join and we announce that.
Yeah, I don't
It has
think-
to be a meeting.
It has to be.
Yeah, I don't
known.
think we
So
could
we
do
either
that.
we either do another meeting, we do a longer meeting. I think if we're getting the budget 31st, first, whatever,
Right.
whatever moment it gets in our things, that we always have the option to provide questions to y'all in advance of the next meeting.
Yeah.
I see. Okay, so
Yeah.
the difference that the thing that I wasn't understanding was it still has to follow like meeting protocol.
Yes.
Like
Yes,
we have
and
to.
it would have to, and it has to get noticed to Secretary of State. We have to say what the topic is.
Gotcha.
For example, like even when you look at our agendas, this very specific language about citizen communication that says somebody could come speak, but if it's not already on the agenda, we can't do anything with it.
Right.
So that's where we have to notice it in front. But that might be something to look at as we go through the process as a recommendation. Like maybe it's not 4 meetings that the finance committee has. Maybe it changes to add a 5th meeting in there.
Sure.
But y'all are also under a time crunch from
Yeah.
the time you have to give the budget. We need to look at it and the time that council has to approve it in order to start your fiscal year. So it probably would mean in August, us
Right.
doubling up and doing other meetings or a
And-
longer one.
And 2 of us can't meet. That's not in breach of anything.
That's also true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
True.
but
Okay.
do we don't need a motion like extend the next. That's something that y'all do internally, right? To make the next meeting 90 minutes. Okay.
Correct.
We do need
A motion
Mo-
to adjourn.
a motion to adjourn.
I'll make the motion.
Okay. I'll second it.
Appreciate it.
All in favor? Aye, 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 aye.
Aye.
Aye, aye, aye. Great. Thank you all so much.
Yes, you're welcome.
I have coordinated cleanups in this park, Adopt a Trail Park, since 2015. And the purpose behind it is to have clean parks. My children grew up in Pflugerville, and so we came here